Hi, I'm Rhodri Davies. I run Giving Thought, which is a think tank, the in-house think tank at Charities Foundation, which is actually conveniently for me based downstairs from here, so this is the shortest journey to events I've ever had to make. Why I'm here, I mean, my role is much broader than kind of technology or even blockchain. I run a think tank, as I say, kind of within Charities Foundation, and the focus is on philanthropy and the work of charities and kind of ensuring that people are able to give as effectively as possible to the causes they care about. But back in 2013, I slightly accidentally got interested in cryptocurrency in kind of naive way, thought, ooh, Bitcoin, that's a new source of money, therefore some people could give it to charity. That's where I started from, and then over time I kind of went through the journey that I think a lot of people went on of thinking, hang on a minute, perhaps what's more interesting than that is the sort of underlying technology that allows you to keep a record of transactions. And at that time people were starting to talk a lot about the way that blockchain could be applied in lots of other different kinds of contexts to record different sorts of assets. So I subsequently have produced 4, I think, sort of discussion papers looking at various aspects of the ways in which blockchain technology could be applied to the world of charities, and particularly kind of charitable giving. And I'm just going to kind of flag up a few of the key points that have come out of that have led to particularly interesting conversations and that have led to a continual sense of surprise that every time I say something that certainly within CAF people think is absolutely insane and in the realms of science fiction, within 6 months I've had somebody get in touch and say they're actually doing it right now. So the first thing that I think is very interesting, and this is kind of where I started from, and we've heard some examples of this today, is the way in which technology can be used to reduce or even remove some of the costs that charities currently face around transactions. So obviously the kind of disintermediation in things like financial services or legal services in the future might well mean that a lot of the costs charities face, particularly when operating across geographic borders, might be radically reduced, so FX costs, banking costs, those sorts of things. And also, as well as the reduction in costs, it could make it possible to get money into areas of the world where currently is extremely difficult, either because traditional banking infrastructure is lacking or because governance is an issue or corruption is an issue. Obviously, that massively begs the question about how you get the cryptocurrency back out into something that people can use in the real world, which I think is the backdrop to quite a lot of this conversation at the moment, because unless there is universal take-up of cryptocurrency, a lot of these blockchain use cases are fascinating, very interesting in pilot phase, but they're kind of not very applicable in the real world, and I think that is a challenge. The second way in which I think this is very interesting from the point of view of philanthropy, and certainly you can see this in the work that Raf's been doing with Alice and Ben and the guys with Disperse, is around massively increased transparency, almost potentially 100% transparency, certainly within the closed system that's on the blockchain. That has the potential to boost trust amongst donors, as we've heard, but I think also it's important for charities to cotton on to the fact that the technology makes this possible, not only so they have the opportunity to take advantage of it now, but also so they don't find themselves overtaken by it, and in a situation where somebody has flicked on a light switch and there is 100% transparency, and they have failed to have the necessary conversations with their donors about the need to spend a certain proportion of money on central costs, the fact that in some circumstances you might want 100% opacity. For instance, if you are an aid organisation trying to get money to a charity working in Uganda around gay rights, you probably don't want somebody to be able to just look at that and see potentially even who the individual organisations or even individual beneficiaries are. So I think there are significant challenges that need to be thought through now. Moving slightly more into the realms of things that I thought were speculative, but it turns out not so much. One thing I think is very interesting is the convergence of blockchain with other technologies, particularly artificial intelligence. So blockchain, one of the things, if it does take off and there's large-scale adoption, it will result in hugely increased data sets around lots of things. Certainly social needs, if you assume that government agencies are going to start using it, it will hopefully open up silos around data on social and environmental needs. And assuming that organisations, charities and others start to record their social value in the way that somebody like Alinga was saying might be possible, you suddenly have these huge data sets available, not only on where the most pressing needs are, but where the most successful interventions are. And using artificial intelligence to come up with a rational matching of those things could mean in the future there's a kind of version of philanthropy in which the human donor can be entirely removed. Now, I've sort of said this to people before, and they've said, but, doesn't that take the heart out of it? Why? Nobody is ever going to be down with the idea of philanthropy where they don't have the elements of donor choice. But where I think it's very interesting is the third bit of the convergence with the kind of massive growth in the Internet of Things. There's going to be an exponential increase in the number of machine-to-machine transactions going on, which will be generating lots of little bits of revenue all over the place. There's the opportunity, I think, to direct even a tiny fraction of those towards charity along the lines of something like a kind of rounding to the pound initiative at the moment. When you go into a restaurant and they say, do you want to round up your bill to the nearest pound and give that to charity? Imagine that could happen for every single donation, for every single transaction that was going on in a massively connected Internet of Things. Potentially a massive pot of money, absolutely impractical for a human agent to have oversight of every single one of those things. So the choice would be either a very old-fashioned model of, here's a list of 5 charities I want the money to go to, or you have to think through the possibility of applying technology in the form of artificial intelligence to have some kind of matching procedure. So I think it is a thing that could feasibly happen, and I have had conversations with people about that, although it's pretty early days. The other two things that are linked that are slightly separate are the impact that blockchain technology could have, not on the operation of charities as they exist now, but the very sort of structure and nature of organisations and the ways in which people do good. One of these is the idea that you could take existing charitable organisations and register them as entities on the blockchain, and there are people doing this in the corporate space, people like Autonomous and people and other organisations. And the impact that would have, particularly around regulation, is, I think, fascinating and potentially concerning. So you might switch from a model where regulation was set down in laws which were then subsequently enforced by a government agency, so you would be penalised after the fact, to a model where the laws were enshrined up front algorithmically and it was impossible to break them in the first place. Now, there's great efficiencies in that. There's also some slightly kind of terrifying draconian implications around restrictions of freedom, particularly from the point of view of charities, where it comes to things like campaigning, when you might well want to break the existing laws in order to demonstrate the flaws in them or the fact that the system is not perfect as it stands, and you might find it impossible to do that in that scenario. And then the final thing comes back to something that was said earlier. I think a question was raised about whether disintermediation posed an existential threat for the charity world, and I think the sense was it might have an impact in certain areas, but it probably won't be all pervasive because there will always be benefits from scale. I think that's true, but I think there's something very interesting about the kind of distributed autonomous organisation, DAO model, and particularly the kind of application of AI to that, which is this idea of AI DAOs, where I think actually the benefits of decentralisation in terms of things like logistics and economies of scale, and also the benefits in terms of decision making that currently require you to have some sort of centralisation, might potentially evaporate, and so you can have these huge distributed networks of individuals able to act in a concerted way to address social issues and directly interact with organisations or even individuals on the ground, and have a kind of procedure for consensus building and also responding to need. And all of a sudden the traditional model of an intermediary charity that we've had for the last 100 years, because that was the best solution that we currently had, suddenly looks no longer relevant. And the question then is, what is the role of the charity in that world? Do they just take on an advisory or a curation role, or do they cease to have any function whatsoever? And I haven't currently got an answer to that question, but that's where I've got to. Thank you.